What's up guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. Today's video is a bit different compared to my usual stuff. I'm going to be talking about the 3 best tactics builds in Dead Cells 5 BC. I've been thinking about doing this video for a while and I finally got the time to do it. And before I start on number 3, I just want to remind everyone that the 3 builds included are purely based on my personal experiences and opinions. Also, I didn't come up with 2 of these builds, so the link to the original creators of those 2 builds will be in the description. But with that out of the way, let's get right into it. At number 3, we have the Glass Cannon DPS build. The build consists of the Electric Whip, the Hakuto's Bow, the Alchemic Carbine, the Sinew Slicer, and the Flamethrower Turret. From the name of the build and from the weapons themselves, you might have already figured out that the build focuses on DPS. Each weapon focuses on dealing a different type of damage. The Electric Whip deals electric damage, the Carbine deals poison, and both turrets focus on dealing fire and bleed damage. Each of these damage counters deals its own significant amount of damage. It might take a while to gather all the pieces to the build, but once you do, none of the monsters stand a chance. When I tried out this build for myself, I no-hit the giant in under 30 seconds and proceeded to melt through every enemy in the infected shipwreck biome. I was killing enemies that I didn't even touch, and I killed everything before it could even come close to harming me. The only downside of this build is that it's incredibly easy to die from a single hit. In the infected shipwreck, I took a hit and it erased all of my health in an instant. Fortunately, the damage output can completely make up for the lack of survivability, but there's always a risk of making a slight mistake and completely throwing the run, which is what happened to me in the end. There is one simple solution to this. For mutations, you could try taking Dead Inside, since it increases your health by 50% with the downsizing of having the effects of food and health potions. However, that doesn't have to be an issue because the damage output will help you recover your health if you continue to attack after taking a hit. Now, for mutations, I recommend choosing Point Blank, Acrobatipack, and Support. For this build, Acrobatipack is mandatory since you're always going to have one weapon in your backpack, and without that one weapon, your damage output is going to be reduced significantly. The way Acrobatipack works is that every time you roll, you can then attack with a ranged weapon, and then the ranged weapon inside your backpack fires out at the same time, but at a reduced damage rate. The next mutation is Point Blank, which increases your damage from ranged weapons if you attack from a point blank range. It's an amazing early game mutation that gives you a massive edge over every single enemy. The 40% base increase can literally be the difference between life and death in some situations. So I recommend that you choose this mutation first if you don't already have an item in your backpack by the second biome. Apart from these two, the last 2 mutations I want to recommend are Dead Inside and Support. Dead Inside gives you a massive health increase, and Support gives you even more damage. The choice is entirely up to you, because either mutation has its own benefits and drawbacks. Choosing Dead Inside makes you less likely to get one-shot by an enemy, while Support gives you even more damage and can potentially make up for the lack of health that Dead Inside fixes. I would personally choose Support because I wanted to push the limits of how far the damage output could go, but choosing Dead Inside, or really any other viable mutation, is respectable. One more change you could make is adding Tesla Coil and taking out the Electric Whip. Tesla Coil is regarded by many as the best turret because it can attack on a 360-degree radius, and it can attack an unlimited number of enemies at the same time, which would make it so that you cannot be attacked from behind or from above. Tesla Coil is great for crowd control and absolutely melts through biomes and bosses. The only reason I didn't replace Flamethrower Turret with it is because I didn't have it unlocked at the time, which is unfortunate, but not a great big deal. If you choose Tesla Coil, you can then replace Electric Whip with another fire-based ranged weapon. My personal choice would be the Fire Blast because it deals consistent and higher damage than any other fire-based weapons, like Pyrotechnics or the Molotov. But that's pretty much it for this build. The mandatory pieces of this build would have to be the Carbine, Hakuto's Bow, Sinew Slicer, and Acrobatipack. You can't really take out or replace any of those weapons because they don't have a viable replacement option. But the optional pieces would have to be the point blank mutation, support, dead inside, fire blast, flamethrower turret, and Tesla coil. Honestly, you can customize this build as much as you want to fit your playstyle, because with 4 different types of DPS, you're still going to deal tons of damage regardless of the types of weapons that you're carrying at the time. Overall, it deals an insane amount of damage, but because it's a glass cannon build, getting hit will cripple you greatly, but that can be remedied with the help of Dead Inside and or Disengagement. Next up, we have V.Me's Bullet Hell build. V.Me is personally one of my favorite creators, and his videos are just on another level. He can be considered one of the OGs because he's been playing this game since 2019, which is just straight up insane. So go to the description and subscribe to his channel. The link to his channel is in the description, as well as the video where he used the build. Anyways, the build consists of the repeater crossbow, the Hakuto's bow, the heavy turret, and the double turret. There really isn't much to say here. The build is just insane. The gameplay speaks for itself. The repeater crossbow roots the enemies and sprays arrows at them, melting them almost instantly when paired with barbed tips, one of the best mutations in the games. Barbed tips places a DPS counter on a victim for every arrow stuck in them. Since the repeater crossbow has 40 ammo, it can easily take down a boss just by itself in that mutation. When you bring the turrets into play, the DPS just completely overwhelms anything unfortunate enough to be in the crosshair. For mutations, you're obviously going to have to use barb tips, and for the extra DPS, you want Hakuto's bow in the backpack, and you're going to have to use Acrobatapack to bring it into play. The last mutation really is up to you, but I recommend using support since you already have 2 turrets. It'll add another 20% damage increase to strengthen the build even further. And other than that, you can use a point blank for extra damage at close range. I honestly don't feel like I'll need to say much for this build. The build is so powerful, it speaks for itself. The low health isn't even as much of a problem here compared to the last build. Here the monsters can't even move since they're rooted into the ground. So if you roll and attack them from behind, there's nothing they can do. At number 1, we have what might just be the best build in the history of Dead Cells. It's pretty iconic, as it's the first to show everyone the true capabilities of barb tips, which was, at the time, relatively new, since it had only been introduced days to weeks ago. It completely broke the game, and introduced the community to a whole new type of DPS, which reigns supreme even after all the nerfs it's been through over the 10 months that we've had it for. This build is, of course, Psyche's original barb tips build. I honestly think that this might be the most powerful build in all of Dead Cells, as it's withstood the most nerfs, and it completely broke the spoiler boss when it first came out. The build consists of the multiple Nox bow, the kunai, the Hakuto's bow, and the 2 skills are pretty much up to you. To get the best experience, I recommend going into custom mode and enabling the alternate binding profile, which lets you bind multiple actions to one button. By doing that, you can make it so that when you press your attack button, it does both the primary and secondary attack, one after the other. When you attack, it almost instantly puts 4 arrows in the victim, so that they get 4 damage counters from bar tips, along with the damage from both weapons. When I first tried out the build, it only took me 1 try to make it all the way from Prisoner's Quarters to the Queen's Arena. I didn't no-hit any of the bosses, which is unfortunate, but I came close each time. I did some insane damage, and at the end, what killed me was not my damage, but the lack of health potions. I personally just like how balanced most tactics builds are, since they can deal high damage outputs at a fast pace. But if you get hit even once, you might lose all your health, and that definitely shows in these 3 builds. Personally, if I had the option to, I'd use 2 heavy turrets. The damage boost from both turrets would be better than using the owl like I did in my video. As for synergies, I'd recommend finding weapons and skills that do extra damage to bleeding enemies, as pretty much every enemy will get the bleed effect from the kunai. For mutations, you'd obviously use barb tips for the DPS, and you want our acrobatic pack to be able to use the Hakuto's bow. But the last mutation depends on how you want to use the build. If you have turrets as your skills, you'd want support. If you want more survivability, you'd be better off with dead inside or disengagement. If you want to kill things faster, you'd want no mercy, though it wouldn't really serve any purpose for this build, since everything dies within a singular second. However, that's pretty much it for this build. Thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate all the support lately. Shout out to V.me and Psyche, whose builds I borrowed for this video. Also, if you guys enjoyed, make sure to let me know by liking and subscribing, because it really helps my channel get out there, and any support is worth it. But that's all I have for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.